Hi everybody, it's Jay and I'm back in the booth for another sneak peek video preview of next Friday's new release here on Say with Jay. It's Jessie Gussman's Candy Cane Dreams, book number 6 in her absolutely fantastic Mistletoe Meadows Sweet Christmas Romance series. As always, we'll be taking a look at the story and have a live preview reading for you in just a moment. But as Jessie likes to do, she's mentioned a dish within the story, and we thought it would be fun for me to make it for you here in yet another installment of a segment we like to call Cooking with Jay. In our story, our heroine, Kate, who we'll talk more about in a bit, is talked into coming to dinner by her old college roommate, Nellie McBride. We met Nellie, as you might remember, in the book previous, Holly Jolly Dreams. Well, Nellie informs Kate that she really has something to look forward to, one of her mother-in-law Marjorie McBride's specialties. Now, let me stop here for a second to confess something. As you guys can probably no doubt tell, I was born and raised in the Deep South. My hometown is Monroeville, Alabama, for those who don't know. And with that birthright comes a few culinary burdens. Now, I hope this will not result in my Southern card getting revoked, but I actually like instant grits. Yep, I said what I said. And while it's not quite the same culinary sin, I love good old boxed Kraft macaroni and cheese. Kraft dinner for my friends north of the border. But, you know, the noodles that come with the package of bright orange cheese dust that you add milk and butter to. Now, I say all of that to say that while I enjoy the simpler versions, there is something special about getting the really good homemade stuff. And that's what's waiting for Kate, Marjorie's homemade macaroni and cheese. And that's what we're making for you here today. So, without further ado, let's get started. And, as always, the ingredients and the recipe will be in the description of this video down below. Now, let's take a quick look at those ingredients. And as the name would imply, there is a lot of cheese involved. Let's start there. You'll need 4 cups of sharp cheddar cheese, shredded, 4 cups of Gruyere cheese, shredded, and for our topping, 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese, shredded. As a quick note here, as y'all know, I'm normally all about using the grated Parmesan cheese in the big green canister, but for this, it is absolutely worth it to get some of the fancier stuff if at all possible. Okay, continuing on, we'll need a 16-ounce box of elbow macaroni, or any favorite tubular pasta, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, a total of 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 6 tablespoons for the mac and cheese, and 4 tablespoons for our topping. You'll need 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour, 3 cups of whole milk, and whole milk really does work best here. And you'll need 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. We'll need 1½ cups of plain panko breadcrumbs and 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika, and finally, salt and pepper to taste. Now, to get started, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and grease a large 3 to 4 quart baking dish, or baking dishes if you want to split it up and freeze some later, like I'm going to do. Next, combine your shredded cheddar and Gruyere cheeses in a large bowl and set that aside, and get some water boiling in a large pot. When that water is boiling, add your pasta and cook 1 minute shy of al dente, according to the package directions. When that's done, drain your pasta well and put it in a large bowl. Then, turn the heat down to medium and melt 6 tablespoons of the butter in your stock pot or Dutch oven. While that's melting, Drizzle your pasta with the olive oil and stir it gently to combine, then set it aside. Once the butter is melted, you want to whisk in your flour and continue cooking for 1 minute. Next, you want to gradually whisk in the milk. Follow that with the heavy cream. Then continue whisking and cooking for another 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, whisk in your salt and pepper. Next, we're going to add roughly 2/3 of the cheese, a handful at a time, and whisking as you go, and allow it to get all melty, creamy, and smooth. It should be nice and thick. Next, we're going to add in our macaroni, stirring as we go to get it all nice and mixed and thoroughly coated with the cheese sauce. Next, take your baking dish, or dishes since this makes a ton and I'm going to freeze some, and spoon about half of the pasta into it. Sprinkle on top of that the remaining 2 cups of cheese, then spoon on the rest of the pasta. Then, in a small bowl, combine your breadcrumbs, your Parmesan cheese, your smoked paprika, and butter, the melted butter, and mix that well. Then spread it out over your mac and cheese. Once that's done, pop it into your 350-degree oven until it is golden brown and bubbly, about 30 minutes. By the way, if you are freezing a portion, don't bake it. After you top it, let it cool and then freeze it, and bake it after thawing it when you're ready to serve. In any case, once it is golden and bubbly, pull it out and let it cool for a few minutes, then get ready to try some of the most creamy and amazing mac and cheese you have ever had. There you go, folks. I hope you will try this recipe out, and if you do, please let us all know how it goes down in the comments. All right, let's take a look at next Friday's release, Candy Cane Dreams. As I mentioned, it's the story of Kate Woolbert, the college roommate of Nellie Bushnell, now McBride, who has arrived in Mistletoe Meadows just before Christmas to become the new school counselor after the new year. She's leaving a frustrating job at an inner-city school in Baltimore, but she's also looking for a fresh start after her fiance broke off their engagement, on the previous Christmas day, no less. As she's driving through town before daybreak, she sees a handsome man already hard at work in a candy shop. She soon learns that this man, Jack Henderson, is not only working very hard to keep his candy shop in business after the death of his wife 3 years before, but he also has an adorable daughter, Lilly, who suddenly stopped speaking after her mother's death and hasn't said a word in the 3 years since. When Kate volunteers to help counsel and work with Lilly before her actual job begins, she finds herself pulled into Mistletoe Meadows' holiday magic and pulled even closer to Jack. Can they overcome a setback in the planning of the town's Christmas festival, a corporate chain threatening the town's businesses, especially Jack's, and the mystery of his silent child's voice? To find out, you definitely need to pre-order your copy of Candy Cane Dreams on Amazon now, and come back here next Friday for the audiobook release, and coming soon to Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. But for now, here is a sneak peek from the opening scene of Candy Cane Dreams. Kate Woolbert tightened her grip on the steering wheel and watched the snowflakes as they fell lazily down, drifting up and over her car windshield as she drove through the sleepy town of Mistletoe Meadows. The streetlights, with large lighted outlines of Christmas trees, candy canes, or snowmen anchored around them, made the snow glisten and glitter as it slid past her car as she motored slowly down the street. Everything she owned was in her car, although she wasn't thinking about that as she looked at the dark storefront windows that somehow, despite the early hour and lack of anyone walking around, still managed to seem warm and welcoming. She left Baltimore shortly after midnight because she hadn't been able to sleep. She still had several hours before she was supposed to meet with Principal Stevens about her new job as school counselor, which started after the holiday break. But since her old job had ended at the end of November, they had agreed that she could spend the month of December hanging around the school, helping where she could, and getting to know the teachers and students and their parents. It was the kind of opportunity that existed only in a small-town school. Small towns. She looked again at the sparkling Christmas decorations, the cheerful yet dark store windows, and wondered again how she'd ended up here, because she really didn't think of herself as a small-town girl. A light caught her eye, something a little different, a little warmer than the rest, and she looked across the street, her gaze catching on a cute, weather-beaten sign in the shape of a candy cane. Then she looked below the sign to the yellow light that had caught her attention. Behind the counter, a man, impossible to tell his age from where she was in her car, stood at the counter, dumping ingredients into a large mixing bowl. A white apron was tied around his waist, with a picture she couldn't discern, but she guessed probably had to do with Christmas on the front of it. It was faded and worn, and yet somehow still cheerful and Christmassy, even though she couldn't see the details. Someone was up early this morning, as early as she was. Although he hadn't driven from Baltimore, he was happy, content to do his job in an old store in a small town, where he'd probably lived all of his life. It wasn't something she ever saw for herself, but somehow the idea of living in a small town didn't seem quite as repulsive as it had through her teen years and college years. Her roommate, Nellie, had constantly raved about the amazing, close-knit, family-like atmosphere of her small town. But Kate had been determined that she would remain a city girl. After all, teaching in an inner-city school for an impossibly low wage was one way to give back to her community, wasn't it? Her car inched down the road, and she lost sight of the man in the window as she pondered that question. It didn't feel like she was giving anything back. The things she was teaching at the inner-city school didn't really help her students at all, and she wasn't allowed to talk about her faith, not even a word. And yet, she could tell them all kinds of lies about genders and sexuality and despicable things that went against every moral code she might have, and it was perfectly okay. How was that serving her children? It had become a moral dilemma for her. And then the terrible breakup last Christmas of the engagement that she thought was going to lead to a happily ever after for her had ripped everything out from underneath her, and she had started applying for other jobs in other communities, although, again, she wasn't sure she wanted to be a small-town girl. Somehow she found herself in a parking lot at a church at the edge of town. She turned around and started driving back through, ostensibly to look for places for rent. Baltimore's high rent and low wages had left her with very little savings, and she needed someplace cheap and fast. Her savings would dwindle exceptionally quickly if she had to stay at a hotel for very long. Not to mention, the closest one was 45 minutes away. She turned around and tried to justify the second trip through because she needed to find a place to stay, and she might have missed a for rent sign. But deep down, she knew it was because the town made her feel like she was curled up in an ugly Christmas sweater, a mug of cocoa in one hand, a fire blazing in the hearth, as she read a good book and the Christmas tree twinkled in the corner beside her. How did a town give a person a feeling like that? She never felt like that in the city. But she loved the hustle and the bustle and the busyness and the fact that there was always someone awake, and she never felt alone. Weren't small towns lonely and dead? Boring? The yellow lights of the candy shop caught her attention again along with the man, still behind the counter, still working, still doing what he always did, she supposed. This time, she noticed the elaborate candy cane display in the window and the sign that said, "Handmade Candy Canes." Did people actually hand make candy canes? She didn't even know that was a thing. But the store just seemed so cozy, the display so blatantly Christmassy, and the man obviously content with his work. He wasn't on his phone, and he didn't even look up as her headlights flashed by. What would it be like to be so grounded and rooted in one's life? Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great Jesse Gussman audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.